The Starlight Hotel, a symbol of luxury and exclusivity in bustling New York City, was about to face an unexpected challenge. When Ethan Morris, a black businessman and owner of the hotel, decided to infiltrate disguised among guests and employees, he had no idea of the profound injustices he would uncover. Amidst looks of contempt and exclusionary practices, a young employee named Sarah observed everything in silence, not knowing she was about to become the key to a radical transformation. What secrets did the Starlight Hotel hide in its luxurious corridors? And how would one man's fight for justice trigger profound changes in an empire built on appearances? Let's find out. But before we dive into this story, comment where you're watching from, and if you like tales full of unexpected twists and moments of justice, don't forget to subscribe for more exciting stories. The sun was setting over New York City, tinting the sky with orange and pink hues that contrasted with the glass skyscrapers. In the penthouse of one of the city's most exclusive buildings, Ethan Morris contemplated the urban panorama from his window. At 45 years old, this black entrepreneur had reached the pinnacle of success, becoming the owner of the Starlight Hotel, the most prestigious in the metropolis. Ethan adjusted his impeccable Armani suit and looked at himself in the mirror. His face reflected determination and a hint of unease. The time had come to set in motion a plan that had been maturing in his mind for weeks. "It's time to see the true face of my hotel," he muttered to himself. With a sigh, he headed to a hidden closet in his dressing room. Upon opening it, he revealed a set of worn clothes, old shoes, and a disheveled wig. Carefully, he began to transform himself. Each garment he put on was one step closer to a reality he suspected, but needed to confirm. As he applied makeup to simulate dirt on his face, he remembered his childhood in a working-class neighborhood in Brooklyn, the looks of contempt, the hurtful comments, the doors that closed before him. He had fought all his life to overcome these obstacles, to prove his worth in a world that often judged him by the color of his skin rather than his abilities. Now completely transformed, Ethan barely recognized himself in the mirror. Where before stood a successful businessman, now he saw a homeless man with ragged clothes and unkempt appearance. "Perfect," he thought. "No one will suspect who I really am." Before leaving, he took his phone and dialed a number. "Sarah, it's Ethan. I need you to be alert tonight." "I'm going to do that special inspection we talked about. Keep your eyes open and act naturally." On the other end of the line, Sarah, a young hotel employee whom Ethan trusted completely, nodded with determination. "Understood, Mr. Morris. I'll be watchful of everything." Ethan hung up and headed for the door. Before leaving, he took one last look at his luxurious apartment. For a moment, he hesitated. Was he doing the right thing? Wouldn't it be better to trust his team and the reports he regularly received? But his mother's voice resonated in his mind. "Son, never forget where you come from, and never stop fighting for what's right." With that memory giving him strength, Ethan left his apartment. He took the service elevator to avoid awkward encounters and soon found himself on the street. Blending in with the crowd that ignored that the apparently homeless man passing by was actually one of the most powerful businessmen in the city. As he approached the Starlight Hotel, his heart was racing. The lights of the imposing building shone in the New York night, promising luxury and exclusivity. Ethan took a deep breath and prepared himself mentally. "Let's see if the shine of my hotel is just a facade," he thought as he crossed the street towards the main entrance. What Ethan was about to discover would change not only his vision of the hotel, but also his perspective on the people around him and, ultimately, on himself. Ethan approached the revolving doors of the Starlight Hotel with a hesitant step, perfectly playing his role as a disoriented and homeless man. The doorman, dressed in an impeccable navy blue uniform, looked at him with evident disgust and stood in his way. "Sir, this is not the place for you." "Please leave," the doorman said in a sharp tone. Ethan, maintaining his act, mumbled, Just want some water. It's very hot." The doorman frowned and replied, "There's a public fountain 2 blocks away. This is a private establishment." At that moment, a group of elegantly dressed clients approached the entrance. The doorman immediately changed his expression, flashing a servile smile as he opened the door for them. "Welcome to the Starlight Hotel. Have an excellent evening." Taking advantage of the distraction, Ethan slipped into the lobby. The contrast between the outside world and the luxury of the hotel was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the vast space. Polished marble reflected the light, creating an ethereal atmosphere, and the scent of fresh flowers permeated the air. Several guests and employees immediately noticed his presence. Looks of bewilderment and disgust were not long in coming. Ethan walked slowly, observing every reaction, every gesture. A group of executives who were animatedly conversing near the bar fell silent as they saw him pass. One of them, a middle-aged man with an expensive watch on his wrist, made a rude gesture and muttered something to his companions, who laughed discreetly. Ethan felt a pang of pain, not for the gesture itself, but because no one, not a single employee, intervened or showed the slightest sign of disapproval at such behavior. He continued his tour until he reached the reception desk. The receptionist, a young woman named Emma, looked at him with a mixture of surprise and anxiety. "Excuse me, sir," Emma said in a trembling voice. "Can I help you with something?" Before Ethan could respond, an authoritative voice resonated behind him. "What's going on here?" Ethan turned to find himself face to face with Richard, the hotel manager. Tall, with perfectly combed hair and an impeccable suit, Richard was the very image of efficiency and professionalism, or at least, that's what Ethan had always believed. "Sir," Richard said, addressing Ethan in a tone that mixed condescension and disgust, "I'm afraid you'll have to leave. This is a private establishment and you're disturbing our guests." Ethan, staying in character, stammered, I just wanted some water. It's very hot outside." Richard made an impatient gesture. "Emma," he ordered the receptionist, "call security. And you," he added, addressing Ethan, "you'd better leave on your own before you're forced out." At that moment, a soft but firm voice interrupted the scene. "Wait a moment, please." Everyone turned to see Sarah, the young employee Ethan had trusted, approaching with a glass of water in her hand. "Sir," Sarah said, addressing Ethan with a kind smile, "here's some water. Do you need anything else?" Richard looked at Sarah with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Sarah, what do you think you're doing?" "I'm just helping someone in need, sir," Sarah responded calmly. "I don't see how that can harm the hotel's image." Ethan took the glass of water, thanking with a gesture. As he drank, he observed the dynamic between Richard and Sarah. The tension was palpable. "Thank you," Ethan murmured to Sarah. Then, turning to Richard, he added, "I'm leaving now. I don't want to cause trouble." As he walked away towards the exit, Ethan could hear Richard reprimanding Sarah in a low voice. "That's not the kind of people we want here. Next time, call security immediately." Ethan left the hotel with a heavy heart. What he had witnessed in just a few minutes exceeded his worst fears. Prejudice and discrimination were deeply rooted in his hotel's culture, from employees to clients. But he had also seen a ray of hope in Sarah. Her act of kindness stood out like a beacon amidst the darkness of indifference and contempt. As he walked down the sidewalk, moving away from the glow of the hotel, Ethan knew his mission was just beginning. He would have to return, observe more, understand better. And then, when he had all the necessary information, he would act. The Starlight Hotel was going to change, of that he was sure, but the path to that change would be long and difficult. The night advanced, and Ethan, still in disguise, managed to re-enter the hotel through a service door. His heart was racing as he slipped through the back corridors, areas he rarely visited as an owner, but which now became his observation ground. The bustle of the kitchen reached his ears long before he could see it. As he approached, the aroma of spices and gourmet dishes flooded his senses. He stopped at the entrance, observing the frenzy of activity that defined the culinary heart of the Starlight Hotel. Amidst the organized chaos, Ethan recognized Jason, the head chef. Tall, with a bushy mustache and a volatile temper, Jason ran the kitchen with an iron fist. Ethan had always admired his culinary talent, but what he witnessed that night left him cold. "Mike!" Jason shouted, his voice resonating above the noise of pots and pans. "Where's that damn garnish I asked for half an hour ago?" A timid-looking young man, whom Ethan recognized as one of the newly hired kitchen assistants, approached trembling with a plate in his hands. "Here it is, chef," Mike stammered. Sorry for the delay, I was experimenting with a new presentation and… Jason didn't even let him finish. With a brusque movement, he threw the plate to the floor, making it crash and scatter its contents. Experimenting? The chef roared. Who do you think you are? You're a simple helper. You're not here to think. You're here to do exactly what I tell you. Understood? Mike, with tears in his eyes, nodded silently and bent down to clean up the mess. Ethan noticed that no one in the kitchen seemed surprised by the scene. It was evident that it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. As Mike cleaned, Jason addressed the rest of the staff. Listen up, everyone. This isn't a community dining room. We're the best hotel in New York City, and our clients expect perfection. There's no room for errors or creative ideas from people who don't know their place. Is that clear? A chorus of "Yes, chef" resonated in the kitchen. Ethan observed how some cooks exchanged resigned looks, while others seemed to approve of Jason's words. At that moment, Sarah entered the kitchen with an order. Her eyes briefly met Ethan's, and he could see a flash of recognition in her gaze, quickly disguised. "Chef Jason," Sarah said in a firm voice, "the gentleman at table 12 requests to speak with you. He says the soup was cold." Jason frowned. "Impossible. My soups always come out at the perfect temperature." "However," Sarah insisted, "the customer is quite upset and threatens to write a bad review if he doesn't speak with you personally." The chef muttered a curse under his breath. "All right, I'll go, but this isn't over." Before leaving, he turned to Mike, who had just finished cleaning. "You useless. Prepare another soup and make sure it's hot. If you mess this up, you'll be on the street before you can say, 'Garnish.' Understood?" Mike nodded nervously and got to work. Ethan, taking advantage of the confusion, approached him. "Hey, kid," he whispered, maintaining his role as a homeless man. "I saw what happened. Are you okay?" Mike looked at him surprised, as if he had just noticed his presence. Yes, I'm fine. It's just that…" He looked around nervously before continuing in a low voice. "I have some ideas to improve the dishes, make them more innovative, but Chef Jason doesn't want to listen." "Don't let them discourage you," Ethan said, surprised by the sincerity in his own voice. "Your ideas are important." Mike flashed a grateful smile, but quickly returned to his task when another cook shouted, "Hey, who let this bum in?" Ethan quickly slipped away, but not before seeing Sarah intervening to calm the situation. As he moved away from the kitchen, Ethan felt a whirlwind of emotions. Jason's arrogance, Mike's wasted talent, the silent complicity of the rest of the staff. It all formed part of a much bigger problem than he had imagined. But he had also seen glimmers of hope, Sarah's bravery, Mike's passion. Perhaps, Ethan thought, the change he was seeking was already germinating in the hearts of some of his employees. It just needed the opportunity to flourish. With that idea in mind, Ethan prepared for his next stop on this journey of discovery, the hotel bar, where the most influential clients usually gathered. There, he suspected, he would find another piece of the puzzle he was trying to solve. The Skyline Bar, located on the top floor of the Starlight Hotel, was known for its panoramic view of New York City and for being the meeting point of the city's elite. Ethan slipped silently into the area, taking advantage of the dim light and bustle to go unnoticed. The atmosphere was sophisticated. Soft lights, live jazz music, and the tinkling of crystal glasses mixing with discreet laughter. Ethan positioned himself in a dark corner, from where he could observe without being noticed. It didn't take long for him to identify several familiar faces. Politicians, businessmen, celebrities. All of them regular customers, whom Ethan used to cordially greet during his official visits to the hotel. Now, however, he had the opportunity to witness their behaviors when they believed no one important was watching them. At a nearby table, Ethan recognized Charles Thompson, an influential senator, conversing in a low voice with Richard, the hotel manager. He approached close enough to hear fragments of their conversation. "Make sure no one finds out," Thompson was murmuring. "I don't want scandals. This hotel has always been discreet, hasn't it, Richard?" Richard nodded with a complicit smile. "Of course, Senator, discretion is our specialty. You can rest easy. No one will know about your special visits." Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. What kind of dark arrangements were being carried out in his hotel without his knowledge? His attention was caught by another scene. A group of executives, clearly drunk, was harassing one of the waitresses. The young woman, visibly uncomfortable, was trying to maintain her composure while serving drinks. "Come on, beautiful," one of them said, grabbing her arm. "Why don't you stay with us for a while?" Ethan was about to intervene when he saw Tom, the bartender, approaching the table. "Gentlemen," Tom said with a forced smile, "I'm afraid I must ask you to release my colleague. We're delighted to serve you, but there are limits we must respect." The executives looked at each other, surprised by the interruption. Finally, the one who had grabbed the waitress let her go, not without muttering, "Don't be a killjoy. We were just having fun." Tom took the opportunity to move the waitress away, whispering something to her that Ethan couldn't hear. The young woman nodded gratefully and quickly retreated towards the kitchen. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and pride upon seeing Tom's intervention. He remembered having hired him personally, giving him a chance despite his humble origin. It was comforting to see that he hadn't been wrong about him. However, his satisfaction was short-lived. Moments later, he saw Richard approaching Tom with a frown. "What do you think you're doing?" Richard hissed. "Those are VIP clients. If they want to have some fun, we let them. We can't afford to lose them." Tom seemed to want to protest, but finally lowered his head. "I'm sorry, sir, it won't happen again." Ethan felt his blood boiling. What had his hotel become? A place where harassment was tolerated in the name of profits. As he pondered this, he noticed that Sarah had entered the bar. She scanned the place, as if looking for something, or someone. When her eyes met Ethan's, he saw a flash of recognition and relief on her face. "Service hallway on the 3rd floor," he murmured. As Sarah walked away, Ethan prepared to leave the bar. His mind was spinning with everything he had witnessed, the corruption, the harassment, the complicity, but he had also seen flashes of integrity in people like Tom and Sarah. He left the bar with the certainty that the conversation he was about to have with Sarah would be crucial. Something told him she had vital information, something that could be the key to unraveling the true nature of the problems at the Starlight Hotel. As he headed to the meeting point, Ethan wondered, what secrets was he about to uncover, and how would these secrets change the future of his hotel and all the people who worked there? Ethan arrived at the service hallway on the 3rd floor with his heart racing. The dim lighting and silence contrasted drastically with the bustle of the bar he had just left. Just a few minutes later, Sarah appeared, looking nervously around before approaching him. "Mr. Morris," she whispered, "I know it's you. I recognized you from the moment you entered the lobby." Ethan nodded, partially removing the makeup that concealed his identity. "Well done, Sarah. I knew I could trust you. Tell me, what have you discovered?" Sarah took a deep breath before speaking. "It's worse than we imagined, sir. Richard doesn't just allow discriminatory behavior, he actively encourages it. I've overheard conversations, explicit instructions to treat guests differently based on their appearance or perceived status." Ethan frowned. "Do you have concrete evidence?" "I have recordings," Sarah replied, discreetly pulling out her phone. "And it's not just Richard. Chef Jason has been systematically rejecting job applications from people of humble origin or certain ethnicities. He says they don't fit the hotel's image." As he listened to the recordings, Ethan felt a mixture of anger and disappointment growing inside him. The voices of Richard and Jason, people he had trusted for years, resonated with blatant prejudice and discrimination. "There's more," Sarah continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I discovered they're using the hotel for illegal activities, money laundering mainly. They take advantage of certain VIP clients, reservations, to move large sums of cash." Ethan leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of these revelations. "My God, how could I have been so blind?" Sarah put a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort that transcended hierarchies. "It's not your fault, sir. They've been very careful in hiding everything." "Why did you decide to investigate, Sarah?" Ethan asked, regaining his composure. Sarah's eyes filled with determination. "Because I believe in what this hotel could be, a place of true hospitality, where everyone is treated with dignity. When you hired me, I saw that vision in you. I couldn't stand by and watch others destroy it." Ethan nodded, moved by the young woman's loyalty and courage. "Thank you, Sarah. Your integrity is exactly what this hotel needs." Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching, both tensed, preparing for the worst. "Sarah," Richard's voice echoed in the hallway. "Where are you? I need you at reception right now." Sarah looked at Ethan with panic in her eyes. He made a reassuring gesture. "Go," he whispered. "Act normal. We'll meet again soon." As Sarah hurried away, Ethan hid in the shadows, his mind working at full speed, and he was determined to root it out. As he stealthily headed towards the exit, Ethan Morris began to devise a plan. It wouldn't be easy to dismantle years of corrupt practices and change such an ingrained culture, but he was determined to do it. The Starlight Hotel would become the beacon of inclusion and excellence he had always dreamed it would be. However, as he progressed through the corridors, a new concern arose in his mind. How could he implement these changes without alerting Richard and the others? And how could he protect allies like Sarah and Tom in the process? Ethan knew the following days would be crucial. He would have to move carefully, gather more evidence, and prepare for a confrontation that could shake the very foundations of everything he had built. As he left the hotel, blending once again into the New York night, Ethan Morris promised himself that he wouldn't rest until the Starlight Hotel was truly a place of respect, dignity, and equality for all. The following days were a whirlwind of activity for Ethan. Dividing himself between his public role as the hotel magnate and his secret incursions as the mysterious homeless man, he worked tirelessly to gather more evidence and develop an action plan. In his private office, protected by state-of-the-art security systems, Ethan spread out a complex network of documents, photographs, and recordings on his desk. Each piece of the puzzle revealed a new layer of corruption and discrimination that had taken root in his hotel. "It's as if I had built a castle on quicksand," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Sarah, who entered cautiously with a folder in her hands. "Mr. Morris, I have the information you asked for about the bar and restaurant finances," she said, placing the folder on the desk. Ethan nodded gratefully. "Excellent work, Sarah. Any news?" Sarah hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yes, sir, I've noticed that Richard has been more vigilant lately. I think he suspects something is going on." This news made Ethan straighten in his chair. "We'll have to accelerate our plans then. We can't give them time to cover their tracks or, worse yet, retaliate against innocent staff." Together, Ethan and Sarah went over the plan they had been developing. It was risky, but necessary. "Phase 1, Ethan began. "Complete infiltration. I'll continue with my disguise, but this time I'll stay at the hotel as a guest. I need to observe operations 24 hours a day." Sarah nodded. "I've already arranged a reservation under a false name. No one will suspect." "Perfect. Phase 2, documentation. We need irrefutable evidence of every irregularity, every act of discrimination, every suspicious transaction. Mike in the kitchen and Tom at the bar are willing to help," Sarah added. "Both have witnessed unacceptable behaviors and are tired of keeping silent." Ethan smiled, feeling a flash of pride for these employees who dared to stand up for what was right. "Phase 3, he continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "The confrontation. Once we have all the evidence, I'll call an emergency board meeting. That's where we'll expose everything." Sarah looked worried. "What if Richard or Jason try something desperate when they feel cornered?" "That's why Phase 4 is crucial. Reform," Ethan replied. "It's not just about exposing corruption, but implementing fundamental changes in the hotel's structure and culture. New policies, diversity training, an anonymous reporting system. We're going to rebuild the Starlight Hotel from its foundations." As they went over the details, Ethan couldn't help but feel a mixture of anticipation and fear. He was about to risk everything he had built, but he knew it was the right thing to do. "Sarah," he finally said, "I want you to know that, whatever happens, your position here is secure. In fact, I'm considering promoting you to a leadership position once this is all over. Your integrity and dedication are exactly what this hotel needs." Sarah's eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and determination. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." When Sarah left, Ethan was left alone with his thoughts. He looked out the window of his office, contemplating the New York City skyline. The Starlight Hotel stood like a beacon in the night, but Ethan knew its glow hid dark shadows. "It's time for this hotel to shine for the right reasons," he told himself. With renewed determination, Ethan began to prepare for his most challenging role yet, that of a common guest in his own hotel. He knew the following days would be crucial, and that every action, every word, could be the difference between the success and failure of his mission. As he put on his disguise once again, Ethan Morris promised himself that, regardless of the personal cost, he would transform the Starlight Hotel into a true symbol of excellence and equality and respect for all. Ethan, now fully transformed into his alter ego, a middle-aged businessman named Robert Greene, entered the lobby of the Starlight Hotel with a worn suitcase in hand. His heart was pounding as he approached the reception desk, aware that every interaction would be a test for his hotel. Emma, the receptionist he had seen on his first incursion, greeted him with a professional smile. "Welcome to the Starlight Hotel, sir. How may I help you?" "I have a reservation under the name Robert Greene," Ethan replied, modulating his voice to sound slightly hoarse. As Emma verified the reservation, Ethan noticed how her smile faltered slightly upon seeing the details. Yes, Mr. Greene. We have a standard room reserved for you for a week." The tone of surprise in her voice didn't go unnoticed by Ethan. Clearly, he wasn't the type of guest who usually stayed for such long periods in the luxurious hotel. "That's right," Ethan confirmed. "I'm in the city on business," Emma nodded, but Ethan could see she was struggling to maintain her professionalism. "Of course, sir. Let me call a bellhop to accompany you to your room." As he waited, Ethan observed the lobby with new eyes. He noticed how other guests, dressed in designer clothes and shiny jewelry, looked at him sideways with curiosity and, in some cases, disdain. Finally, a young bellhop approached. "Welcome, sir. Please allow me to take your luggage." Ethan handed him his suitcase and followed the bellhop to the elevators. During the journey, he noticed how the young employee maintained a slightly greater distance than usual, as if fearing Ethan might soil his impeccable uniform. Once in the room, Ethan gave a modest tip to the bellhop, who could barely hide his disappointment before hurriedly leaving. Alone in the room, Ethan let out a long, deep sigh. Although it was a standard suite, it was still luxurious. However, he could now see the small imperfections that would normally go unnoticed: an almost imperceptible stain on the carpet, a slight chip on the edge of a table. "Details," he muttered to himself. "Everything is in the details." He took a small recording device from his suitcase and strategically hid it in the room. Then he took out his phone and sent an encrypted message to Sarah. Phase 1 completed, initiating continuous observation. The following days were a revelation for Ethan. As Robert Greene, he experienced firsthand the subtle but constant differential treatment received by guests who didn't fit the hotel's ideal profile. He noticed how room service requests took longer to be attended to, how in the restaurant, he was always assigned the least desirable tables away from the windows with city views. How in the bar, waiters always seemed to attend to the most ostentatious clients first. One afternoon, while having coffee in the lobby, he inadvertently overheard a conversation between Richard and one of the floor managers. "That Greene," Richard was saying in a low voice. "I don't like him. He doesn't fit in here. Make sure he doesn't feel too comfortable. We don't want people like him thinking they can come here regularly." Ethan felt his blood boiling, but he maintained his composure. This was exactly the attitude he was determined to eradicate. However, not everything was negative. Ethan also witnessed acts of kindness and professionalism. He saw how Tom, the bartender, treated all clients with the same respect, regardless of their appearance. He observed Mike in the kitchen, struggling to implement his innovative ideas despite Chef Jason's resistance. And, of course, there was Sarah. Although she had to keep her distance to avoid raising suspicions, Ethan could see how she strived to correct the injustices she witnessed, always with a kind smile and a word of encouragement for guests and co-workers alike. By the end of the week, Ethan had a clear and detailed picture of the daily reality of his hotel. The evidence he had gathered was overwhelming, both in the negative and the positive. Sitting in his room on the last night, Ethan reviewed his notes and recordings. He knew the time had come to move on to the next phase of his plan. The confrontation was around the corner, and with it, the opportunity to transform the Starlight Hotel once and for all. With a mixture of anticipation and determination, Ethan sent one last message to Sarah. "Get ready. Tomorrow we change history." The morning dawned grey over New York City, as if the sky sensed the storm that was about to break out at the Starlight Hotel. Ethan woke up early, his heart beating with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Today was the day everything would change. He dressed in his most elegant suit, carefully storing away his Robert Greene disguise. For the last time, he mentally went over every detail of the plan he had drawn up with Sarah. There was no room for error. Meanwhile, in the hotel lobby, the daily routine began as usual. Richard, impeccably dressed, gave instructions to the staff in his usual authoritarian tone. Jason supervised the breakfast preparations in the kitchen, scolding Mike for trying to add a creative touch to the presentation of the dishes. Sarah, from her position at reception, she observed everything with apparent calm, although inside she felt her heart was racing. She knew that at any moment, the bomb would explode. At 9 sharp, the main doors of the hotel swung open. Ethan Morris, the real Ethan, entered with a firm step, followed by a team of auditors and lawyers. The lobby fell silent, all eyes fixed on the imposing businessman whom many hadn't seen in person for weeks. Richard was the first to react, approaching with a forced smile. "Mr. Morris, what a surprise. We weren't expecting your visit today. How can we help you?" Ethan looked at him steadily, his expression serious and imperturbable. "Richard, gather all the staff in the conference room, immediately." The tone of his voice left no room for discussion. Richard, visibly nervous, nodded and began giving orders over his radio. In a matter of minutes, the conference room filled with confused and anxious employees. Ethan entered last, closing the door behind him. The silence was palpable. "During the past few weeks," Ethan began, his voice resonating in the room, "I have witnessed things that have filled me with shame and disappointment, but I have also seen glimmers of hope and kindness that have reminded me why I built this hotel in the first place." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. He saw confusion on many faces, fear on some, and dawning understanding on a few. "I have been among you, observing, living the experience of our hotel not as its owner but as a common guest." A murmur of surprise ran through the room. Richard visibly paled. Ethan continued, "I have seen discrimination. I have witnessed preferential treatment based on appearances. I have heard racist and classist comments. I have seen how some of you have forgotten the true meaning of hospitality." He gestured, and one of the auditors projected a series of graphs and data on the screen behind him. "But that's not all. We have uncovered financial irregularities, possible money laundering, and systematic abuse of power by some in leadership positions." Everyone's eyes instinctively turned to Richard and Jason, who seemed to want to disappear at that very moment. "However," Ethan's voice softened, "I have also witnessed acts of kindness. I have employees who strive to do the right thing despite the circumstances. I have seen innovation being stifled and talent being ignored." His eyes rested on Mike, who stood a little straighter. "From today, everything changes. This hotel will return to its roots, to the principles of respect, excellence, and inclusion on which it was founded." Ethan proceeded to detail the immediate changes. Richard and Jason would be suspended pending a deeper investigation. New anti-discrimination policies and an anonymous reporting system would be implemented. A complete audit of all hotel operations would be carried out. "And to lead these changes," Ethan concluded, "I have decided to appoint someone who has demonstrated integrity, compassion, and vision. Sarah," he said, turning to her, "I name you the new general manager of the Starlight Hotel." Spontaneous applause erupted in the room, led by Tom and Mike. Sarah, genuine hope for the future of his hotel and the people who worked in it. The storm had arrived, but after it, Ethan was sure a new dawn would come for the Starlight Hotel. The days and weeks following Ethan's dramatic revelation were a whirlwind of activity at the Starlight Hotel. The building still stood, as majestic as ever from the outside, but inside, a silent revolution was underway. Sarah, in her new role as general manager, faced daily challenges. With a mixture of firmness and compassion, she led the transformation process. Her desk was always full of reports, proposals, and action plans. But she was never too busy to listen to an employee's concerns or a guest's suggestions. One of her first actions was to implement a diversity and inclusion training program for all staff. The sessions, at first received with skepticism by some, soon became spaces for open dialogue and mutual learning. Mike Ikaya, the young and creative kitchen assistant, finally had the chance to shine. Sarah named him sous chef, giving him the freedom to experiment with new dishes that fused traditional American cuisine with modern techniques. The hotel's restaurant soon began to gain recognition for its innovative culinary proposal. Tom, the bartender who had always treated everyone equally, was promoted to beverage and entertainment manager. Under his leadership, the Skyline Bar transformed into a welcoming space for all, maintaining its elegance but losing the exclusive and elitist atmosphere that had characterized it. Ethan, for his part, adopted a more active role in the daily management of the hotel. He was no longer a distant figure, but a constant and accessible presence. He was often seen conversing with employees at all levels, listening to their ideas and concerns. One day, while walking through the lobby, Ethan encountered Emma, the receptionist who had greeted him when he was disguised as Robert Greene. "Mr. Morris," she said, visibly nervous, I wanted to apologize for how I treated Robert Greene. I'm ashamed of my behavior." Ethan looked at her kindly. "Emma, the fact that you recognize that is already a big step. What's important is not the mistake, but what we learn from it." These types of conversations became common in the hotel. Little by little, the staff began to truly internalize the values of respect and inclusion that Ethan and Sarah promoted. However, not everything was easy. The investigation into Richard and Jason's activities revealed a more extensive network of corruption than initially thought. Ethan had to make the difficult decision to involve the authorities. Seeing his former trusted employees face legal charges was painful, but necessary for the complete cleansing of the hotel. As the months passed, the Starlight Hotel began to gain a new reputation. It was no longer just known for its luxury, but for its welcoming atmosphere and commitment to equality. Guests from diverse backgrounds and social statuses began to choose the hotel, attracted by its new philosophy. One day, almost 6 months after the great revelation, Ethan was in his office reviewing the latest financial reports when Sarah entered with a radiant smile. "Mr. Morris, I have incredible news," she said, barely containing her excitement. "We've just been nominated for the Hotel of the Year award in the Social and Business Innovation category." Ethan rose from his chair, genuinely surprised and pleased. "That's wonderful, Sarah. It's a testament to the hard work of the entire team." "There's more," Sarah continued. "The magazine Hospitality Today wants to do a feature on our transformation. They say we're a role model in the industry." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep satisfaction. "Arrange a meeting with all the staff. I want everyone to know that this is a collective achievement." That night, in the renovated Skyline Bar, an impromptu celebration took place. Employees from all departments mingled, laughing and sharing stories. Ethan observed the scene with his heart full of pride and gratitude. As he toasted with his team, Ethan reflected on the journey they had undertaken. The Starlight Hotel had not only regained its shine, but now shone with a warmer and more welcoming light. A light that illuminated equally all who entered its doors. The road had been difficult, but the result was worth every challenge faced. The hotel had become a true home away from home for its guests and a family for its employees. And for Ethan, it was the realization of a dream he didn't even know he had, to create a space where excellence and humanity could coexist in perfect harmony. A year had passed since that day when Ethan Morris had decided to disguise himself and enter his own hotel. The Starlight Hotel now stood not only as a symbol of luxury on the New York City skyline, but as a beacon of inclusion, innovation, and excellence in the hotel industry. It was a warm spring morning, a special press conference. Ethan, dressed in an elegant but not ostentatious suit, was behind the improvised stage in the center of the lobby. Beside him, Sarah reviewed some notes, her face reflecting a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked with a reassuring smile. Sarah nodded, returning the smile. "More than ever, Mr. Morris." Together they stepped onto the stage, received by a wave of flashes and the expectant murmur of the audience. Ethan approached the microphone and began, "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this special day for the Starlight Hotel. A year ago, we embarked on a journey of transformation, a journey that has led us to rediscover the true meaning of hospitality." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. He saw familiar faces among the crowd. Mike, now executive chef, Tom, who had become a renowned mixologist, Emma, promoted to head of reception, all of them an integral part of the hotel's new era. "Today," Ethan continued, "we are not here just to celebrate our achievements, but to announce the next chapter in our story." A murmur of surprise and approval ran through the audience. "This foundation," Ethan explained, "will be dedicated to providing education and employment opportunities to young people from disadvantaged communities, with a special focus on diversity and inclusion. Because we believe that true luxury is not in marble walls or silk sheets, but in the richness of perspectives and experiences that each individual brings." Sarah stepped forward and took the microphone. "As part of this initiative, the Starlight Hotel commits to allocating 10% of its annual profits to the foundation. Additionally, we will implement an internship and mentoring program to ensure that these young people not only receive education, but also real growth opportunities in the industry." Applause resonated in the lobby. Journalists raised their hands, eager to ask questions. Ethan and Sarah responded with patience and transparency, detailing the plans for the foundation and how it aligned with the hotel's new philosophy. As the press conference continued, Ethan couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He remembered his childhood in a working-class neighborhood in Brooklyn, the challenges he faced, and how he had vowed that if he ever succeeded, he would use his position to make a difference. At the end of the conference, a young journalist raised his hand. "Mr. Morris, what would you say has been the most important lesson you've learned in this transformation process?" Ethan smiled thoughtfully. "Part of the most important lesson has been that true change begins with the willingness to see things from a different perspective. Sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone, remove our masks, and really listen to others to understand how we can improve." After the conference, Ethan met with his team in the renovated Skyline bar. Raising a glass, he proposed a toast to a future where excellence and inclusion go hand in hand, where every person who walks through our doors, whether guest or employee, feels valued and respected. As the sun set over New York City, bathing the city in golden hues, Ethan stood by the window of his office. The Starlight Hotel shone with a new light, a light that promised a brighter future, not just for the hotel, but for the entire industry. It had been a long and sometimes difficult journey, but looking back, Ethan knew that every step had been worth it. The hotel he had built was no longer just a symbol of luxury, but a beacon of hope and positive change. With a smile of satisfaction, Ethan realized that this was not an ending, but a new beginning. The real journey, that of creating a more just and inclusive world, was just beginning. And the Starlight Hotel would be at the forefront of that change, shining like a guiding star for all who dared to dream of a better future.